Thank you and welcome back. Actually, I just got a countdown in my earpiece. This is a good training for learning other languages. Try to do the counting the other way around. Do the countdown in every language that you know. So, thank you very much for coming back, and I hope you had a good dinner. We have Paula Pino already with us. I'm introducing the interesting session, the fun session, the iPhoneization session. It's called The Value of Digital, and everybody wants to be digital. Digital is cool, digital scales, digital promises a lot of unicorns very quickly. So if you have a digital company, you will be a millionaire in no time, right, Emma? And Emma will talk to us and with us with the panel. We have, can I get that back? Sandro Jacovella. Let me look at the people. Christian Dahlmann. No, I cannot. I cannot read all this. Here we go. So we have Paula Pino from the European Commission, Christian Dahlmann, that's what I wanted to avoid, Yanni Lairima, that's also what I was not so sure about, Sandro Jacovella, and Emma Champion from Bloomberg. And I'll let you introduce the speakers in detail and moderate the discussion. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. Is this working? Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Let me just put this down. Hope everyone enjoyed the lunch break, and good, I guess we're now in afternoon, good early afternoon. As Thomas mentioned, my name is Emma, and I am an associate at Bloomberg NEF. I am really, truly honored to be introducing this panel this afternoon on digital innovation in heating. And I'd firstly like to extend a really huge thank you to the organizers. This is an incredible event to be welcomed back to after a long time for me of not having any in-person events. So thank you, Savina, thank you, Thomas, for having a really warm welcome back to everyone. This is a really, truly stunning venue. So to begin with, I just wanted to spend a couple minutes introducing some of the key concepts that we're going to be going through today in this panel before I introduce our distinguished guests. So to begin with, and I hope my slides will come up. We didn't actually test this, so is the slide, Savina? Is the slide ready? Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. For those of you not familiar with us, BNEF is a group of 250 professionals delivering market research on the energy transition around the world, and we are part of the wider Bloomberg network. We cover the energy transition across all sectors, from clean power to advanced transport, buildings, and industry. We have specialists dedicated to looking at the impact of the transition on commodity markets, from oil and gas to chemicals, metals, across the whole value chain. And we also cover cross-cutting technologies like hydrogen and CCUS as well. Today, of course, I'm here to talk about our low-carbon heating coverage, and just wanted to spend a little bit of time walking you through some of our latest analysis to get our discussion started. So, our New Energy Outlook is a flagship piece of research that we publish every year that looks at the future of the energy transition out until 2050. And I wanted to spend 5 minutes today just walking you through some of our key results. This year, we have 3 scenarios. There we go. That for the first time look at what a net zero economy could look like and the impacts on the global energy system. The main distinctions between these 3 pathways are green, grey, and red scenarios are the pathway that's assumed. So our green scenario, we have a high electrification, high adoption of renewable hydrogen. This compares quite differently to our grey scenario, which looks at a high adoption of CCS and a much lower level of electrification. And finally, our red scenario looks at what a future that unlocked nuclear power potential could look like. So today I want to focus on the results from our building scenario in the green one here. So, and my first key message is that electrification can be a really important driver for net zero in the building stock by 2050. So this chart here is showing emissions in the building sector by technology and the pathway for abatement. So as you can see in the blue, electrification is really the primary driver by which fossil fuel heating systems are displaced in this scenario. And as you can see, this would require really significant and mass heat pump adoption worldwide over the next 3 decades. This high volume of heat pump adoption, sorry, the slide's not progressing, there we go. This high volume of electrification in the building stock enables us to make much better use of renewable electricity directly, rather than coal and gas and oil. So this chart is showing the primary energy consumption by fuel in the building system, and so really like the supply side of the emissions chart that I just showed. And as you can see, wind and solar is directly displacing the fossil fuel consumption in this sector. Now, this paints quite a rosy picture for the future of buildings, and one of the things that, as we all know, is that the high heat pump uptake can actually put a lot of pressure on the power system itself. So here, if we zoom in a little bit on what that power demand could look like in the future for the grid, here I've stacked up the kind of end-use sectors, so general electricity demand, electric vehicles, and heat pumps in the red. And this is just taking an example day in 2040 for the UK. And as you can see, heat pumps are effectively doubling the winter peak demand within the next 2 decades. So that's putting a lot of significant additional strain on the grid to meet that. What that looks like on the supply side is that the system itself has to do a lot of extra balancing. So you have the same day here on the right, just looking at what generation technologies are actually delivering for that. And I just want to draw your attention to 2 things, because there's quite a lot going on here, but the most important thing is the pink on the top. So we have a lot of energy storage having to kick in and ramp up to shift load from renewables in the early hours of the morning to the evening when it's needed. The second important thing is the grey. So we have a lot of peaker gas that is having to come up to meet for that additional peak load. This also, as you'll notice on the left, the red, is assuming quite a uniform load profile to how heat pumps are actually used in the system. And there could be a lot of other kind of features that could affect what that load profile actually looks like. And we'll kind of get into that throughout the panel today. So things like the level of insulation, presence of storage, and all importantly, flexibility in heating systems could fundamentally change the shape of that demand profile. I just want to show a little bit more detail on some of the electrification scenarios that we've run, because this does have really important implications for how we actually get to net zero and what heat pumps actually mean for the power system overall. So we've modeled different levels of demand-side flexibility. Here I'm showing an inflexible period of electrification, and you can see really steep evening peak happening because heat pumps are not operating flexibly, and they're contributing to a significant additional load at kind of the worst time when the system really needs flexibility. When we model, sorry, it's a little bit difficult to see on here, but we've modeled slightly more flexibility in the heat pump sector, and what this effectively enables is heat pumps and other technologies like electric vehicle chargers that are operating dynamically to actually offer a much smoother load profile throughout the day, and even utilizing solar generation much better in the middle. So I think that's all from me. I'd like to firstly just welcome my panelists up to the stage, and we'll have a sit down, and I'll just grab my notes. And do we have Paula on the line? Is she joining? So firstly, on my left is Christian Delman, who is co-founder and CPO of Tado. Christian has worked with the venture capital firm Target Partners, co-founding telecommunication company Bell Pepper, and worked with consulting firm A.T. Kearney. He has an MSc in mechanical engineering from MIT, and has a real passion for cross-cutting energy technologies and an application in successful products. As the CPO at Tado, I know that Christian is in charge of product and service offerings, as well as business development. We then have Yanni, who's joining us from Fortum today, who has owned a venture with energy market management services for smart heating and cooling and smart charging, so perfectly placed to join us on this discussion on innovation in digital heating. We also have Sandro joining us from Thermoville as founder and CEO. Sandro founded Thermoville in 2016 after obtaining a PhD in electrical engineering on demand response and smart grids. Finally, we have Paula. Is Paula dialed in? I haven't seen her.
Yes.
Oh,
I don't
hi,
know
Paula.
if you can hear and see me.
I can see you. I don't know if there we go. Perfect. And Paula is joining us from the European Commission. Sorry, you're on my other sheet. Responsible for she's a director of the DG ENA at the European Commission, responsible for just transition, consumers, energy efficiency, innovation, and energy security. She's previously been head of the unit at the DG Energy in the European Commission and was responsible for energy strategy, policy, coordination, and then for renewables and energy system policy, decarbonisation, and sustainability of energy sources. Okay, so to begin with, I think based on our discussions today, we've obviously got a really important foundation on what does flexibility actually look like in the heating system. And I think I want to take my first question to Christian today, just to discuss a bit further the value of digital innovation and demand-side flexibility at the system level. So Christian, firstly, just to open up to you, what do you see as the value in digital innovation and connectivity in managing a highly electrified heating sector?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and thanks for having me here today. So there are, of course, multiple benefits of connectivity and the digitization of heating air conditioning systems. But one area which I wanted to highlight here today specifically is the area of flexibility. So, I mean, we heard it in the presentation already. Europe is moving towards a energy system which is based on renewable energies, which are intermittent energy sources. It will be a decentral world. So, and then it's of course important that the consumers of energy and the suppliers of energy speak with each other. And when you look into a recent study from the European Commission, actually half of Europe's energy goes into the heat sector. So half of Europe's energy is used for heat. So not only heating of buildings, also industrial processes, but it's a big segment. So therefore, if you want to get the match right between production and consumption of energy and making it work also in times of high wind and high sun, but also in times when there's not much energy there, the heat sector must be coupled into the production system. So, and I think this is where digitization comes into play, because if a heating system or a heat pump is not connected, not digital, it will not know what the energy market looks like, or whether the sun shines or the wind blows or so. So therefore, heat pumps need to be connected in order to be an integral part of the energy system. So I think this is essentially, I think, one of the key value propositions of digitization of heat pumps here in specific. And of course, I can elaborate further, but maybe I'll stop here and give the word back to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think absolutely the role of flexibility fundamentally on the demand side is going to be really important for integrating a high level of renewables. So Yanni, do you kind of agree with this? Are there any other benefits that digital innovation can particularly bring into a highly electrified heating sector? And I'd also like to know your thoughts on if there are any technical bottlenecks that could actually limit the potential of demand side flexibility in heating.
Yeah, from the power system view, I would say that something you also highlighted was that heat pumps being bigger or part of something bigger, a bigger system. And something also you, I think, highlighted well was it's not a question of digitalizing and having connectivity only to heat pumps, but it's a question of how heat pumps can be part of the bigger picture, where we have connected EVs consuming energy, we have smart inverters, home batteries, self-consumption, and kind of all of these devices and appliances working together. Then on the heat pump connectivity and being able to harness the flexibility we have on the heating sector, I would say it's a big question about how we can do it in a technical perspective. How can we enable connectivity? How can we have steerability and kind of forecast flexibility and provide services to consumers? But for that to happen, I see three things need to work together. One is, of course, that all the smart people in the heating manufacturing industry come together and work on building smart devices that can be steered, that can be assets in the power system. The second part that needs to happen is from the regulatory perspective, taking flexibility to energy markets, but also to be able to kind of forecast and optimize heating for the users, which brings a third part. It has to be a product that users want. It has to be a product that consumers can easily take and accept. And when these three things are combined, I really do believe that heat pumps can be a part of a future energy system that is more flexible, more dynamic, and is in balance from end to end.
Thank you so much. I think that's a perfect summary. I think we need to kind of now bring in a really important variable that really affects how the pace of this unfolds in different markets, and that's policy and regulation. So, Paula, I'd like to take this next question to you. What do you see as the role of policy and, of course, the massive onslaught of upcoming legislative changes, both for supporting heat pump adoption in the first place, but then actually planning for a system that needs digital innovation and needs flexibility?
Thank you, Emma, and good afternoon. And I'm so sorry I could not join you physically in Gare Maritime. It would have been much nicer. Can you hear me well? Because I can hear some echo.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. So, of course, the role of policy and setting the proper regulatory framework. We've set the vision, right? We're talking about climate neutrality by 2050. We're talking about reducing by 55% the greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Now, in order to deliver this, it is clear that we will need the green transition, but also the digital transition. It's what we call the twin transition, and one will really boost the other. And we've mentioned buildings, for example, and buildings being responsible for today 40% of the EU's total energy consumption, and we drastically need to bring that down. We're saying that with the renovation wave, we need to at least double the current energy renovation rate of buildings in Europe, while bringing down the energy consumption of buildings. So what are we putting forward? You will see a number of provisions across the proposals which were put forward by the Commission last July, and also the upcoming ones, still part of the package on the Performance of Buildings Directive, where you can recognize several provisions which will lead precisely to rolling out technologies such as heat pumps. To give you some examples, we are planning to set minimum energy performance requirements at building level, precisely to trigger the renovations that we need. And in order to bring down the emissions, we will need more efficient technologies, such as heat pumps in both new buildings and in renovations. If you look at, for instance, the building automation and control systems, which are already foreseen in the existing Performance of Buildings Directive, which foresees an obligation for all large buildings to have such automation and control systems. This is another element. The provisions on smart readiness indicator is another element. The provision now in the renewables proposal to have a share of renewables as part of precisely the heating and cooling in buildings. But even if we look at already existing legislation in force, such as the Electricity Directive, where it is foreseeing the adoption of implementing acts on interoperability requirements. And I cannot emphasize frequently enough the role of interoperability. Also, when we are talking about, of course, then going on to the digitalization, it is absolutely essential. It's one of the acts which will come up. Another very important regulatory proposal for our discussion today is our implementing act on space and water heater. Again, it's being currently prepared and due for adoption next year. And here, heat pumps are core and center of this implementing act. We are looking into elements such as hybrid heat pumps becoming a separate product category, ensuring third-party conformity, ensuring self-monitoring and reporting. So clearly setting the signals in terms of what needs to be done to decarbonize whole sectors in the economy and buildings. And finally, if you look also at the financing tools and for instance, the taxonomy proposal, which is meant to rewarding products in the upper two labeling classes, which should also therefore put clear signals to investors and attract finance, both for manufacture and installation, for instance, of heat pumps. Now, I also want to say, however, that putting the regulatory and the financial means in place when we're speaking about public funding, but also when we're speaking about putting the conditions to attract private financing, are not enough. And because we are in this setting, and because we are speaking among you essentially, who are the experts and involved in the industry of heat pumps, we also need to think of the challenges. And the Commission and the regulatory work will not do it alone. We need clearly still work on the high upfront investments which are required to acquire a heat pump. We need to work on making sure that we will have also the necessary human resources capacity. I'm speaking about installers who are ready to install, to maintain the equipment. We need to think also of course, the protection of the end user data, which is something which falls again on the policy front, but also really clearly challenges which are still out there and need to be tackled, and where legislation alone will not do the trick. And we need to really come all together, industry included, to tackle the challenges which are still on the way for heat pumps to become real mass market products.
Absolutely, thank you so much. I think that actually leads us into a really nice segue to the next part of the discussion, which I wanted to bring to this panel, which is actually how do we unlock the flexibility in the industry and for consumers? So what is the value proposition like? So Sandro, maybe I can take this next question to you. I'd like to know how you think about the value proposition for flexible heating as it is today, and how can we start to unlock from the industry side, like the business models that would allow for flexible heat pump usage to actually be valued by consumers and by companies?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Emma. Maybe to provide some background and some scope on my opinion on this matter. With Thermovolt, we offer a combination of energy efficiency and demand response service for flexible heating appliances, such as heat pumps and electric storage water heaters. That's something we offer to OEMs, but we also have an all-in retrofit solution to do that. Now, regarding the value prop of flexible heating, I think it's important to state that currently the market access for flexible heating is still fairly limited in volume and also quite fragmented across Europe. So that's why, in my opinion, what we see happening in this space is that the value proposition for flexibility is that end consumers, they get energy insights, they get increased energy efficiency at a reduced or a zero upfront cost. And to compensate for that, the technology providers or the OEMs, they can have access to this rather limited or future upfront revenue coming from the balancing markets. So we know that there is a lot of value to be created, but nevertheless, if we look at connectivity rates of factory appliances and also deployment rates of home energy management systems, it does not really reflect what they can offer to society. It needs to be unlocked and unleashed, and I think the best way to do that, like colleagues Yanni and Christian said, is to really unleash them into the, those several tens of gigawatts of flexibility onto the balancing and onto the wholesale markets. That will be crucial. I personally, I see two urgent steps we need to take there. One is, of course, that there should be full access to wholesale and balancing markets in a technology neutral and voltage agnostic way. These appliances, they have a lot of value to offer in these services, and that should be facilitated as soon as possible. We in the heating sector also have a role to play there, because initiatives like Equity, like IO-Energy, they do allow OEMs and FSPs and home energy management providers to directly access the markets. So it's for us to prove that we can take over that service in a reliable and robust way. Maybe a second important step is the handling of that delicate balance between energy efficiency and system efficiency. I know that one of the key pillars in the Fit for 55 package is the energy efficiency first principle. Well, our appliances, our heat pump heating appliances, they are very energy efficient, of course, and I do agree that it's a very valuable and actionable and measurable targets that we should have to obtain climate goals that we have, but we should not lose sight of the dynamic savings aspect. So when system operators source flexibility from heating appliances, that should also count as energy efficiency, because you're putting a highly inefficient and polluting fossil plant out of the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I do start to wonder if this kind of energy crisis that we're experiencing at the moment in Europe will prompt those discussions about, what is the value for demand-side flexibility, really opening up balancing markets and alternate, ways of actually engaging in the demand side. I think it's going to be an interesting way forward. Christian, I want to take the next question back to you. So, maybe just breaking out from the markets and unlocking balancing markets and this kind of thing, more onto the consumer side. What have you found well through Tado that works well from a consumer engagement perspective? How do you actually get people excited about using heat pumps and smart energy systems in their homes, flexibly? And what do you find works?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, the good thing is that your comfort at home and your temperature at home in different rooms never gets boring. So sometimes you sit on the sofa, you're cold, and then you want to change your temperature, or maybe in your bedroom and something. So we see with the Tado application, which is an app on your smartphone where you can control the temperatures in different rooms, and we see that people use it 2.5 times per week. And this continues to be the case. So it's different to, for example, let's say the consumption of smart meter data, which are interesting at the beginning, but then there's not real actionable things you can do. But when it comes to your heating system and comfort at home, this is something that people are really engaging with. And I mean, inside our application, we also take care about a healthy air inside the home, so we give tips and advice when it makes sense to air the apartment, open the windows, and we also measure the consumption of the heating system. So we on a monthly basis we send an energy savings report where we show our users which of the smart features of Tado, so for example a geofencing feature which recognizes when the last person left the home so that the heating can go to a savings mode, etc. Actually, so all the different features, or open window detection, how much they have actually in the end saved for the customer. And now brand new since August in the newest Tado updates, we're also integrating meter data, so smart meter data in specific, to also show on the monthly and yearly basis how much energy you're consuming, and we put it together with our algorithms, which also gives a forecast on the current settings for this month. This would probably be this amount, and when people then change their settings, so for example reduce temperatures in certain rooms, they can see in real time what this effect actually does to them. So they can, from now on, really take a conscious decision of how much they want to spend for their comfort at home. So yeah, this is a little bit how it works right now. And so bringing in the flexibility piece, we're working on this currently mainly with flexible tariffs. So time of use tariffs, so similar to the charts which we have seen here, the wholesale price of electricity varies over time during the day, and consumers can make use of it. The only thing, and this is also a regulatory thing, is that the taxation is a big part of the final kilowatt hour of electricity, the final price. And even if the wholesale price changes dramatically over the day, if 2/3 of the total of the final kilowatt hour price is tax, the price incentive to have smart controls and shift loads is not strong enough. So therefore, I think it would be great if there would be another method. For example, the taxation is according to the wholesale price, and therefore the end consumer prices varies even stronger when you're opting for a flexible tariff, and you have a stronger incentive to really shift loads. And of course, the load shifting is done automatically in the background by smart technology. So long story short, it's a highly interesting space, and people are engaging with it because your temperature and comfort at home will never get boring.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that loops back into the questions for policymakers, especially in terms of, how taxes are structured. And at least from what you were saying before on the data side of things, that's something that Bloomberg obviously knows very well, the power of data and getting people excited. So Yanni, I actually think I want to kind of ask you to, comment on anything that Christian or the other panelists have said so far, and maybe just speak to your experiences on how you think about this challenge in terms of the value proposition for consumers. So how can companies actually deliver a really compelling value proposition, or is it just more expensive to do this kind of thing?
Yeah, so just a bit of background. So Fortum, the company behind me, is the largest energy company in the Nordics, one of the largest energy providers, but also has a large consumer base. At Fortum, I'm heading one of the ventures building these smart products called Hyven.energy. And with what we have been doing for years, we have been going to consumers and retrofitting or connecting over the cloud through manufacturer connectivity to harness flexibility from the consumers. We have tested many products, and when you look at flexibility, it's one thing to identify the flexibility that a device has, but it's another thing to build a product that consumers actually want and benefit from. Of course, flexibility from the power system view is quite clear. We can take it to the balancing markets, we can balance the system, optimize, and use energy when the power system wants you to use energy. But I've been on sales calls trying to sell that to a consumer, saying, hey, your heat pump or your EV charger can balance the power system. And when you just say the word demand response, you can only imagine the question marks that you see or are on the other end of the phone call. Demand response, and having that as a product to a consumer maybe isn't the most interesting, appealing product for the consumer, but is an important part of something that we need to build for the future. Comparing to you guys, I of course come from the Nordics, where smart metering, variable pricing has been the norm from 2008 and forward. It's not at the point where we educate consumers about it. It's at the point where, I hope my father-in-law isn't listening, but my father-in-law is a good example of a Nordic person using variable pricing. He has no smartness in his home. We had our first snow a couple of weeks ago, a bit too early for me, but when that snow came down, he was running around the house optimizing his energy usage manually. He's looking at electricity prices, forecasts, and trying to understand when to use and consume energy. He's clicking timers on his heat pump. He's putting timers on the washing machine and the dishwasher. And that that could be all smart, that could be all automatic. Him going around and doing it manually shows that there is room for smart appliances that are energy smart, that are finding that flexibility and giving consumers the savings that they are looking for. Variable pricing is a good model of kind of directing consumers to be smart about the energy. And it can be combined with energy market access and flexibility and demand response on that side, where consumers have a clear benefit of smart appliances. They have a payback time for their smart device investment. But also the energy market benefits from the access that we have to combine those two products together.
Maybe if I can add on this flexible pricing, the time of use tariff, I think this is really currently kind of, at least in Europe or in our country, Germany and UK, the cutting edge. But maybe if you combine it with smart technology at some point, maybe there will be a type of use tariff, and there is already to a certain extent. So people, for example, can buy a charging tariff or a heat pump tariff in addition to a electricity household tariff. So and then, for example, a heat pump tariff is cheaper than the normal household tariff, but therefore whoever is the provider in the back has the possibility to shift loads, etc., without, of course, reducing comfort. So to your point, exactly, it should not be the case that you're running around. So the first step is smart technology doing it. Maybe the second step, that the customer doesn't even know that there is a flexible pricing. It's somewhere hidden in the back. He knows, okay, if he takes the heat pump tariff together with smart technology, then he'll pay less than in the normal household electricity price. So those could be examples to make it even simpler for consumers.
And to summarize that, you kind of can identify that the consumers are interested, that there is value to give to the consumers. There is interest on the regulatory side that heat pumps and smart technologies become more common. And there is interest on the manufacturer side to build smart new products. The question is, I would say they are not today aligned, and there are mixed matches between. And we could work together to build that kind of, where regulation, manufacturers, and the consumers all benefit.
Yeah, I think so. Collaboration and also interoperability, what you mentioned also earlier, I think it's really something key also for the industry sitting here in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I think that actually brings us into the last few, kind of the themes of the last few questions that I wanted to take. So, we know that consumers are excited about this. We know that there's interest, as you said, on the manufacturing side. How do we actually realize this across the whole value chain? I think that's kind of where I think we need to start to connect the dots. And for the next question, I'd like to actually bring us back to Paula, so to talk about the policy side again, just so that we can kind of gain a bit of perspective on what parts of the value chain do you expect that governments and the EU are really going to have to focus on to actually deliver for the vision that we've kind of laid out here. So, are there pain points that you think policymakers really need to support on? Are there things where we know that there's engagement in certain areas and maybe there's less need for policy?
Really, the entire supply chain is relevant here, and we need to look into the entirety of it. Look, the EU market for heat pumps has been growing at more than 11% per year over the last 5 years. The policy measures that I mentioned earlier will really put out a signal which will contribute to accelerating the penetration of heat pumps in the EU by 2030. This is really a major opportunity for the EU as still a front runner in this market, and an opportunity for the European heat pump supply chain to really develop and strengthen, and eventually and hopefully lead to increased exports to the global market. And as said, I believe all the entire chain needs to adapt, from manufacturers needing to produce more advanced products, We mentioned the need also to make sure that these are heat pumps that can also connect to the internet, can be part of the Internet of Things. We need to develop the communication protocols between the products. We need to improve the network. We need, and I mentioned it earlier, work on capacity building, on upskilling of installers. So really each sector needs its own set of support tools. On our side, from the Commission point of view, what are we doing? For instance, through the Horizon 2020, the Horizon Europe, so the research and innovation programs, we're really supporting the innovative capacity of the EU's heat pump industry. And it's interesting to see we've had a total funding of 146, almost 147 million euro under Horizon 2020 going into this sector. And an interesting project is precisely aimed at ensuring efficient and qualified installation, and therefore really at developing the qualified the qualifications and the professional capacity and skills in the field of heat pumps, just to give you an example. So really it's the whole value chain that we need to look into, and we still have the possibility to develop into a leading market overall, and so we should absolutely seize that opportunity. And just a word on Sandro, because he mentioned the energy efficiency first, and on this, just not to let go unnoticed, just yesterday we adopted a recommendation on how to go about the concrete application of the energy efficiency first principle, with the concrete guidelines, also depending on who are the users of this energy efficiency first principle. So just using the possibility of being here to draw some attention and doing some publicity for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. So I guess for the final question, Sandro, actually that's a really great moment to bring you back in to end our discussion today. Do you agree? Like, what parts of the value chain, from the industry perspective, do you see that really need the attention to get digitalization and innovation in the heating sector?
I really like what I hear from Paula. I think the regulation and the policy is being attacked and pushed beyond the status quo on all fronts. I did my first real pilot steering electric storage water heaters in September of 2011, like exactly 10 years ago, showing that there is value to DSOs, to traders, to utility companies. So I think we have all the puzzle pieces at hand, especially combined with regulation. I think we've all seen we've seen an accelerated step up towards achieving these carbon goals. If you look at the clean energy package, the Fit for 55 package, also the electricity balancing guideline that really pushes for dynamic tariffs across Europe, that pushes for multiple FSPs, multiple connections for your heat pump, for your vehicle. So all of that regulation is really coming fast. I see that's taking up day by day, and it's now it's now really the time for Europe to shine on that perspective by collaborating, by interoperating, and so on. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. So yeah, firstly, thank you to all of my panelists for having this has been a really fascinating discussion for me, and I think touches on lots of the really key, really important aspects that we're seeing in the flexibility system. I think we have about 3 minutes left, so we could throw to maybe one audience question, if there is any for in the audience to bring to either of our panelists. If there isn't, then we can tie up. Thomas has the microphone, so please raise your hand if you have a question to bring to our panelists today.
Well, if not, we will not let this silent go.
I
have a question for sure. Do you think that legislation is doing enough? And maybe I would also ask that to Paula, because Sandro, you mentioned that the Electricity Market Framework Directive is in place, but more than half of the member states of the European Union have not implemented it. And that's significantly limiting business potential and flexibility potential.
Yeah. The actual adoption by member states is something that should be should be further investigated. I think the playbook on European level looks beautiful, and it's really the way we need to go. But the adoption is something I agree with you, Thomas. Yeah.
I think during COVID, I think consumer behavior also changed, where people spent more time in their homes, realizing that we need, like, they demanded other services than maybe before COVID times. Meanwhile, I'd say technology is also taking huge leaps forward. So in some sense, yes, I would agree that legislation maybe needs to catch up a bit. But at the same time, what Sandra was also asking for before was a level playing field for all players and all access. So in that sense, maybe not a requirement to legislate more, but to make sure that these new technologies have room to play on the market, since there already is consumer demand and consumer behavior has changed.
Thank you. So yeah, I think just to sum up the findings of this panel, we know that digital innovation is going to be a really important part of the heating system in the next, 3 decades on our way to net zero. Not only for the energy system itself, but flexibility, reliability, and comfort will really be important in the value proposition for actually getting consumers excited about heat pumps and adopting them in the first place. So again, a massive thank you to my wonderful 4 panelists today, and I'll hand back to Thomas.